Hey, Jackson, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate you coming on the Indiegogo webinar series for how to do PR for crowdfunding.
Thanks
So,
for having me.
yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us as well. Um, as I said before, this is PR for crowdfunding, and we're going to talk about high-level tips, insights, tactics, and what to avoid, questions to ask. Quickly, my name is Sid. I'm part of the marketing team at Indiegogo. I've been in the crowdfunding space for actually about a decade now, working with creators and founders to help launch their campaigns. And now on the Indiegogo side, working still with creators and founders to help bring ideas to life. So it's been really exciting. But before I introduce Jackson and his agency, Proper Propaganda, I just want to share that we have a couple of webinars coming up. We have one on May 16th about glamping. So if you're interested in learning about how to do a glamping campaign on Indiegogo, you're welcome to join that. And then we have in June, how to build a reservation funnel and community before you launch. So please make sure to be on a lookout for the email after this webinar tomorrow and follow us on LinkedIn for more updates and to not miss any other upcoming webinars. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Jackson. Jackson is the founder of Proper Propaganda, PR agency that works with consumer tech companies of all sizes to help build brand equity. Proper Propaganda has worked on over 500 crowdfunding campaigns since 2011, very impressive, and has helped brands scale from pre-crowdfunding to national retail to acquisition. Jackson is also the author of the Tech PR Playbook, which was published last year and is available for free on Kindle today on Amazon. And we're actually going to be emailing everyone tomorrow with the link to download that audio book as a thank you for attending. So I would like to actually turn it over to Jackson to share a few words about himself and the agency, and then we'll get into the interview.
Yeah, you forgot to mention that the book is an excellent natural replacement for Ambien. So if anybody can't sleep out there, I highly recommend our book. It's wonderful. And you won't need a script for it. That's the great thing. You don't have to go see a doctor.
It's good marketing. I don't know, good PR for your own book.
Hey, lots of years in the trenches. I've honed my game. It's a
Yeah.
pleasure to be here, though, and I really appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate everybody listening.
Yeah, I mean, so can you just share a couple words about Proper Propaganda and yourself? I mean, I introduced you, but
Sure. Absolutely. So we are primarily a consumer tech agency. We got our start late in 2011. We've, I think, run the gamut of consumer tech categories. So a range of things, everything from wearables to computer related stuff to audio. We've done it all. We've worked with some very big brands, and we've had the pleasure, I think, over the years of working with some brands that have been with us since crowdfunding through to say their first Amazon launch, through to retail and stuff like that. And being a part of that journey, seeing those journeys is always really interesting. I think, one of the insights is that messaging changes as you go along, people change, but it's been very gratifying to work on those kinds of accounts. Our primary business is helping people build brand equity in the Anglosphere, and that means primarily the US market. So a lot of our media relationships, a lot of our influencer relationships are those that are catering to a US audience.
Awesome. And so this is a fun question because Jackson and I actually met because of a crowdfunding campaign back in 2017. We probably should have, looking back on it, that campaign should have done PR before they launched, but that's a whole other question. For everyone who's raising their hand really quick, we are going to get to all the Q&A towards the end, but also as we go. So if you have questions, please drop it in the Q&A. Thank you. Question about Proper Propaganda in the crowdfunding space. What makes your PR agency different and unique within the crowdfunding space? How are you helping founders?
It's a great question. And I think there's two answers to the question. Answer one, we have done it for a very long time. I think we've seen the space evolve considerably, given that we've had a window on this and been involved with this for 13 years. Crowdfunding has changed a lot in 13 years. And I think we are one of the few entities that I know of that has that long a perspective. The second reason, the second differentiator, is really around our billing model. We use a billing model that we've never seen anyone else use, and that billing model is one that I would characterize as primarily performance-based. There are still some guaranteed fees a client would pay us, but the majority of our compensation or our potential compensation is tied to the media coverage we drive. So we are an incented partner. We are not some fat cat who gets to sit around and collect fees every month or, in a given project by doing nothing. And I think that's one of the things that's over the years appealed to Indiegogo creators and appealed to companies of all stages, but especially early stages, Series A and under companies.
I think it's so important to mention that. And it's such a good segue to the question for individuals who are here. What is PR? In your eyes and in your view, what is PR? And, what is the purpose of it within crowdfunding?
PR is the thing that gave me these gray hairs. At least it's definitely part of the reason. Outside of that, I would say that PR is concerned with the strategy of communications from a company. It is primarily the servant of brand equity. And I say that because I think that's something that a lot of people in our experience, especially tech founders, misunderstand. PR can drive direct sales. Having an article in, Engadget or The Verge or something can lead to a lot of traction to somebody's crowdfunding page. But its primary purpose, PR, is brand equity, is kind of building you up. Why does it matter? Why does it work? It works because it's trusted. I think, no matter what we hear, and obviously we're in an election cycle in the United States, there's a lot of noise about, media this and media that, and it's all BS or whatever. The fact is, a lot of people still trust third-party media outlets, and I think that's especially true when it comes to technology. So if you can get the right media saying things about you, that's going to build a lot of trust, and that's going to help you with a range of things, from increasing your return on ad spend to getting into retail to helping your crowdfunding campaign at that stage. So PR is really the servant of brand equity. And I would say that one of the major elements of PR typically is media relations and influencer relations, both of which can be relevant to crowdfunding stage companies.
Totally. Oh, I have so many follow-up questions on that. So if you're building brand equity, and it is very valuable for a consumer to make a decision based on third-party media outlets, at what stage before you launch your campaign do you need to start?
I think there's a couple of checklist items that I would identify in answering this question. And the first one is, should everybody at the crowdfunding stage be pursuing PR? And the answer is not necessarily. If you have good working prototypes that are going to demo well, they're not going to get stage fright in the demo, then you should consider pursuing PR. Typically, when we've done crowdfunding PR work, you want to be doing the bulk of it before launch. And our roadmap would look like start around 8 weeks pre-launch with a client, build materials, go through the process of targeting media, figure out who you want to talk to, figure out what you want to say, build all the assets to accompany the outreach process, do the outreach around 4 weeks pre-launch, and do it under embargo. Ideally, there are samples going out or demos being had the week before the launch under embargo. An embargo is basically like an agreement saying, we'll show you this thing early, we'll send you a sample early, but you got to promise to publish only after this date. And then you lift the embargo at launch, and hopefully there's a bunch of press. But I think if you don't have samples at the crowdfunding stage that are going to work well, then hold off on PR. If you have those samples and you have the budget, I would say go ahead and do it. And so people say, Jackson, well, what does have the budget mean? Have the budget. Typically, a PR budget with an agency for a crowdfunding campaign is going to range somewhere between $7,000 and $20,000. And I think it can be very, very useful if it works. The problem with PR is it doesn't always work. So when people say, when should we engage with PR? You got to have the samples. They got to work well. You got to have the budget, and you have to have the ability to potentially not have a lot happen for that budget if it does not go well, and be okay. If you are super, super tight pre-crowdfunding, I would say put your money into performance marketing, put your money into email list building and stuff like that. PR is gas on the fire. It is not the match that starts the fire. So when you're at the crowdfunding stage, I think the most important spend typically is on the community. And maybe the quantitative manifestation of that is the email list. PR is a nice to have. It can really do wonders, but you have to meet the conditions.
You're so spot on, and I have like 6 follow-up questions to that based on what you just said. Do we talk about story and we talk about building the relationships, and if you don't have a working prototype, but you still want to build trust with your consumers, what's your take on writing investing in a really good press release and publishing to PR Newswire and picking up some of those outlets versus doing the long tail 8-week approach? Kind of where do you stand on that? And then I've got another follow-up.
For sure. Look, I think there's a couple of things on this. One, press releases are not always the best at getting press. They can be quite useful for owning a little piece of a search engine for a short amount of time. Maybe you're going to send out a press release and your, great aunt Myrna happens to be an editor at some paper that's going to pick it up and run it because she loves you so much and you didn't anger her last Thanksgiving. But absent those scenarios, I think a press release often, especially from a brand new company, goes into the ether and is not typically looked at. So we're always a bit agnostic on the power of press releases. I think most of the time media are going to want to see something tangible. Now, that's not if you are a multi-product company that already has a reputation, already has items in retail and all of that. But if you are brand new, fresh out of the garage, a bunch of folks with a big old dream and you have no prototype, it's probably going to be best not to send the press release and not to bother the media too much. Go bother the media when you can show them something, because that's going to be the first question out of their mouths. What do you got to show us?
Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, totally. Now, let's say that you don't have the work. I mean, let's say you have one working prototype, but you're not in a major city and you can't get there. You want to do the PR Newswire just because you need to grab all of the syndications that are going to pick it up to put it on as credibility and trust.
Yep.
What about, what's your take on focusing on the founder story? And do you think that the founder story is powerful enough, or do you think that it's still worth waiting? And also, follow-up question to that, is launching on a crowdfunding platform newsworthy?
Two great questions. Founder story can be newsworthy. I think it depends on the context and it depends on the founder story. Typically, founders who have rep, cred, some profile from something they've done before, if they're launching something new, that can lead to coverage. It's a tricky thing. I think often founder stories come after you've shown the world you can make a product that, one, works, and two, the world wants. Founder stories open up after that. Sometimes pushing a founder story before you have those things leads to tears and disappointment and a lot of money flushed down the toilet. You end up hating PR companies and people like me. The second part of the question was, forgive me, the second part of the question, what was it again?
A lot of people say, I've had people ask me and say, oh, I'm launching on Kickstarter, it's newsworthy. What's your take on that? Or I'm launching on Indiegogo, it's newsworthy. I'm launching on a crowdfunding platform, it's newsworthy.
It definitely was in 2012, but when last I looked at my calendar, we weren't there anymore. And I think it might be newsworthy in some corners of the world to some smaller local level outlets, but certainly, and I'm assuming most of the folks listening in are going to be from tech and innovation broadly. No big tech outlet's going to care anymore about that. That certainly was the case in the early days of crowdfunding. It certainly hasn't been for a very long time. So I would be leery of that, and I would be leery of going out to media with that angle, only because at some juncture, assuming your company survives and assuming you make a product the world wants, the media are going to be relevant to you. And you want to keep that in mind. You want to make sure you don't anger them even before you need them. So keep that in mind. And I would say avoid unnecessarily badgering or bothering people with news that they're not going to be able to take and, publish content with.
So, what I'm hearing is that you really need to focus on having a few working prototypes, be able to maybe get to some local news outlets that you can talk to, finding your community and maybe going more niche in the media. Like, kind of what's your take on that? And also podcasts. A lot of people think that it's only the top five, Business Insider and, CNET and all these tech outlets, but the tier two outlets are equally as strong because that might be where your core audience is. And I'd love you to follow up on that.
Absolutely. It's a very good point. And yes, in our practice, I can't remember the last time a tech founder didn't tell me they need to be in TechCrunch.
Mhm.
And the irony of this is, one, at the crowdfunding stage, TechCrunch typically refers very little traffic to a crowdfunding page. It's a bit odd how little they refer typically. Not that they haven't. I'm sure there are people with great stories of huge money they made off a TechCrunch article, but typically TechCrunch is a very bad referrer to crowdfunding. The second thing is, I think a lot of outlets, tech outlets, are not monolithic, so they're very, very different. And I appreciate, as you just said, there are ones that are in the top tier, the CNETs and the Engadgets and the Verges and all of those, and those are great places to be. But there are a lot of lesser outlets that can be relevant, that may be open to you when you're maybe not as advanced, when you're at an earlier stage. And I think too often, particularly when people are DIYing their PR during their crowdfunding campaign, they ignore those opportunities. And those are not opportunities to sniff at. They give you, one, the opportunity to get some credibility, get a logo on your page, maybe get a nice quote. They also too allow you to test your chops with media, not only in terms of pitching the media, but also how you do in an interview, how it goes, what the flow is. So this can be opportunities for experience. And I think one of the things we've seen, and it's not, I'm not hating on creators for this. I think it's a natural thing for people who don't do PR for a living. They often get very myopic in terms of the outlets that they look at, in terms of the outlets that they covet. And often there's this huge swath of relevant, useful outlets that just get ignored because their name isn't TechCrunch.
Mhm. And I think it's exactly to that point, what you said about referrals, referring, some people might not be aware of this. When you have an article published, whether it be the top tier, TechCrunch or wherever, or your local media outlet, you need that link back to your campaign page. And a lot of times those big outlets are less inclined to do so, but the smaller outlets, the more niche outlets where your audience is, and those smaller might have a smaller audience, but it's a core target audience that's focused on your niche. And those are the people that you're looking to bring. And a lot of times, it looks good to have that big logo. However, that's a good segue to my next question. Does PR convert to dollars? And what's the purpose? What purpose does PR serve in a crowdfunding campaign?
For certain. I mean, I think within a crowdfunding context, sometimes it can convert to dollars. This is absolutely not its strength. So the idea that you're going to be written about in The Verge, people are going to click the link to your Indiegogo page, go to Indiegogo and purchase, is absolutely, like, it doesn't happen that way that much. Not that it can't, not that it hasn't for our clients in the past, but I would say that often, particularly with more expensive products, something that's, I don't know, say a $300 or $400 audio product, like in a Bluetooth speaker that goes for $400. We have a client at this level. That's a purchase that needs a few touch points. That's a purchase that needs a little bit of consideration. You don't just, most people don't just see it, go, oh my God, I'm in love with this, I have to have it and spend $400. They typically need a little bit of warming up. They maybe need to see an ad, then they need to Google it, then they need to go to Indiegogo, check out the page, see if the video is legit, whatever it is. It's a multi-point journey. And so I think PR has a very important role on that multi-point journey for most higher priced technology products, but it is not, and it should not, be judged in the manner of performance marketing. Where it excels, where the channel is very good, and a context in which it's very good, is longer term. So the moment you turn off those amazing ads that are driving all sorts of traffic on Facebook, they are done. They no longer serve you any value. It is like turning off the light switch in a home. The output of PR lives on for a long time. That story that where Mashable said you were the greatest thing since sliced bread, that's with you the entire journey of your company. So that's going to show up in investor decks. That might show up in the ad you run to get a new CTO. That might show up in a range of sales pages that you're going to deploy around the internet. So I would say PR has a longer term context. It's very valuable. It's very valuable typically for products that are going to be researched by a buyer, but it is not typically an amazing driver of direct sales, nor should it be looked at through the lens of performance marketing.
Sounds like credibility is the word we're looking for. It lends.
Very good. Yeah.
Yes, it
Totally.
sounds like the definition of credibility. Yeah, and it's also really good for retargeting. You visited, you saw it, or maybe it's the other way around. Perhaps somebody actually found the campaign, your Indiegogo campaign, they saw it, but then they go search elsewhere and they want to have some information. And even if it's not that Mashable article, but it's the local news outlet, as long as you have a little bit of traction out there, some coverage, even if it's local, then they search and they go, oh, somebody else wrote about this campaign, that's good, I'm informed, I trust it. Because as people, we're always looking for confirmation, and as you said, the multi-touch point decision making process.
Yeah, and I think that, and you know this well. I mean, this has been some of the clients that you and I have worked on together over the years, projects we've worked on together. It's relevant also for retail. And I'm
Yeah.
going to assume, as I
Wow.
said, that a lot of the folks on here are from tech and innovation, consumer facing tech and innovation. At some juncture, after your crowdfunding campaign, you're going to want to get into retail. Well, once you get into retail, or how you get into retail partly, is by impressing buyers. Buyers want to see that you are thinking about your brand. Retail buyers want to see that you have people who have said good things about you. Retail buyers are also going to want to see that you're investing in the brand, because in a retail environment, it is the brand that drives sales. Jimmy from Best Buy is not around to chaperone every customer through the store. So sometimes somebody's going to need to walk into that Best Buy knowing who you are, with you in their head, without the help of Jimmy, grab the thing off the shelf and go to the cash. So I think this is an important context on the value of PR, and where it can really excel and where it can really matter. Not just at crowdfunding, but certainly after crowdfunding, especially if you're thinking retail.
Totally. And I think it's an interesting topic to discuss. Then market share of voice, what is your share of voice? And a lot of people during the crowdfunding campaign, they're so focused on the campaign, but you're building a campaign to launch a business, to launch not just a brand, but this might be the first of many products, or maybe it's your seventh product in the lineup and you already got your way. But let's say that in this example, that you're launching the product, it's your first product, you're launching the brand. The PR is the foundation for the longevity and the health of the company as well. So it's not just a one-off.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things, and maybe some of your other questions we're going to get at this, but I'll say it anyway now. One of the things that's really interesting about PR for crowdfunding stage companies is that typically the relationships built with journalists, when you show them something and engage with them at the crowdfunding stage, again, assuming you meet my checklist of a proper working prototype or samples and all that stuff. If you can do that, often these are the relationships that will stay with your brand for a very long time. So again, the example I cited before was M Classic. M Classic was an Indiegogo campaign originally in 2019, did around 800K. Some of the people who covered M Classic at that stage are still around. They are salivating for the new product that this company is going to put out this year. They are coming to us. We do not need to pitch them. So I think it demonstrates, if you can get with journalists, show them yourselves, your company at a really early stage, that tends to curry favor, because journalists are always looking for the next big thing. Their job is to break news, find new things. If you can serve that up to them, those are relationships that stay with you.
I love that. And I mean, it's building relationships with people. And I think that's what sometimes we forget about these journalists. Like, oh, these are these oh, they are the gatekeepers to the press and to the media. It's like they're people. And I think one tactic that you can look at for finding the right journalist is look at what they've written about in the past. If they've never covered anything in your topic or your industry or your niche or anything along those lines, ask yourself, is this the right person? But
Yeah.
start looking for journalists who might have a personal passion or have covered it in the past, and reach out to them and say, like, hey, I saw you wrote about X product. We have something that we're launching that's new and innovative. I'd love to have a conversation with you. So it's remembering that you're talking to people.
You are, and they are humans who are very busy, just like you. They are humans that have all manner of messages coming at them all day long from all sorts of sources. Their mothers-in-law also annoy them. A whole bunch of stuff can happen. So when you speak to them, not only are they human, but you want to serve it up clear and short, and you want to be relevant, as you alluded to, Sid. You want to look at somebody's past coverage. You also might want to look, and this is a cheap and easy thing to do that can be really effective. You want to look at what somebody might be saying, say, on social media. It could be that he or she is the audio reviewer for The Verge. You have a pet product and they are on Twitter bitching about something that happened to their dog. That might be an opportunity for you to pitch them, even though they are an audio reviewer. If you see people saying certain things, even if it's outside of what they typically cover, there may be opportunities that arise. So we always say that to our own staff. We always say that to our clients. We're not just going to look at the database we pay quite a bit of money for each month. We're not just going to look at past coverage. We're going to try and find out who these folks are, sometimes beyond their jobs, because there can be opportunities there as well.
Totally. I mean, this is, PR is such a unique space, and it's so broad. We say the press, we say PR like it's this one thing, but it's so much more than just getting a news coverage. It's so much more than that. And I think it's an interesting time to start getting some questions.
Sure.
Yeah, your readiness checklist. No, it's not download. It is not downloadable, but we'll share some more information in the follow-up.
For sure.
Somebody asked, and I think it's an interesting question. Somebody asked, what's the best way to boost a campaign if it already started? And I think this is the big difference about PR versus other marketing channels. Other marketing channels can yield quick results. They can bring you quick sales or quick, impressions. PR is a longer term play. It takes more time investment, maybe some more resources. And so I kind of want you again to reiterate and emphasize how you need to think about PR and the greater picture in all of this.
For sure. I think that I'll try the most direct answer I can give initially, and we get a lot of very well-meaning inbound inquiries to our sales team saying, hey, I've got a campaign and we've been live for a week and we need your help. And we can't take these sorts of clients. We're going to take their money if we do, and we're going to completely waste it. Nothing's going to happen and they're going to hate us. And so, as you alluded to, PR takes lead time, and it takes lead time because it's a little bit of a messy channel in some ways. For a client to come on and be onboarded, we got to download a whole bunch of information about them. Even though we've worked in a myriad of consumer tech categories, we still have to go and sort of check who's saying what and who's covering what. Journalists move around a lot. There's a lot of prep work to do. Developing material takes weeks. And then the outreach itself, because we do it one-to-one, can take up to a month to really show anything. So you gotta have, PR is not, it's not the white knight that's going to ride in and save your campaign if it's in trouble. It really is something, as you alluded to, Sid, that requires prep time, that requires an ongoing process. We have a lot of clients from various parts of the world who say, hey, come on, let's go. We've been working for a month. Where's the coverage? It never happens that way. Things take a little bit of time. Typically, if you're seeing coverage at the end of a second month, at the end, 8 weeks in, that's really good. People have a little hard time understanding
Oh, we froze.
sometimes.
Yeah, totally. And so I think here's a question for you. How can a company know if PR is right for them or not. Or I don't want to say right, you know what? It's not about right. How can a company know, like let's say they're 12 to 14 weeks out from the launch, they're thinking about it, they're organized, they're building their community, they've done their homework.
Yep.
How can they assess if PR is right for them? Like what are some of those, metrics
Yep.
they can look at internally to make that decision?
So there's a couple of things, and I'll come back to the first one is readiness of prototype, not with your team. Take it to somebody else, take it maybe to your local Luddite and get your local Luddite to test it and see how that goes and see does it perform. Second thing though is look at what else is in your category. Lots of people make a ton of money doing Me Too products. We have repped Me Too products through the years. Mostly the Me Too products have voodoo dolls of me that they stick pins in because it's very, very hard for any PR firm, including one that's good, to do a Me Too product. So I think a very clear assessment of are we differentiated? Have we actually built a better mousetrap from a functional perspective? And again, candor internally is the most important element of that. Some PR firms will always tell you that you've built a better mousetrap. My firm will not do that, I promise you. But those are really important kind of questions. Is the prototype working? Are we Me Too? And if we are not Me Too, are we differentiated in a way that is sexy? So one of the most sexy forms of differentiation for a tech product is what I would call democratization. When you can take a solution that was reserved for the few, that was open to the few, and they had to go somewhere specialized to get it, and bring that to people for a reasonable price in their homes, that is a really strong angle in tech. That is not what everybody is doing. I get it. But if you are in that situation, if you are democratizing something that was reserved for the few, typically that's a good telltale sign that pursuing PR is going to be a good idea, particularly if the goal is brand building, retail, building a business.
Okay. No, and that absolutely makes sense. And so let's say that your company meets those factors. When they start to interview and search for a PR agency, what should they be searching for? Should the agency have crowdfunding experience or no? What are some of those key questions maybe that they should be looking for?
It's a great question. So the first one, I'll deal with what I would call the white elephant answer to this question. Often people want to see that a firm has category experience. So I make an audio product. I'm going to hire Sid's firm. Sid, do you have audio experience? That can be a good question. That can also not be a good question. Sometimes it's not required. I think at the crowdfunding stage, you definitely want a firm that understands and has done crowdfunding work for two reasons. One, the crowdfunding tribe, the backers out there are a very, very small country, slightly bigger than Canada, if we were kind of framing it that way. And they are very particular, and the sources of news and information that they seek are very particular. So a crowdfunding agency will know that better than a general agency. The second reason I think crowdfunding experience is important for an agency is that crowdfunding tends to be super time sensitive. So if you don't come out of the gate hard, if you're not working well pre-campaign with an embargo, it's not going to be great. We don't need press. I mean, it's always good to have press, but press on day 16th of a campaign is worth a lot less to the campaign than press on day one. A couple of other questions that I don't get asked a lot by prospects that are interviewing us, but I'm always surprised I don't get asked. One, the billing model.
Mm.
A lot of the PR business is predicated on an agency taking money for time. And that's okay, but it means that all of the risk is on the client. And it's a very hard to know channel PR. So you want an agency whose billing model has some element of performance-based comp to it, because that means they're going to share risk with you in this risky channel called PR. And then the final thing, a more recent thing, and I'm always surprised I never get asked this, you must ask a PR agency how they are using AI in their processes.
Hmm.
Because I think if a PR agency is not using AI, they are probably not your agency. They also should not over rely on AI because, as most of us know, and as I'm sure the listeners on this webinar know, a lot of the product AI pumps out is absolute dross. It's garbage. Like it writes like a college student trying to pad an essay with fancy words often. So I think you got to check in on your potential agency to see how they're using AI. And I would always say red flag if they aren't, and red flag if it looks like they're using it and relying on it way too much without a human overlord to manage it.
So it's the balance. I had a professor, it was a teacher in sixth grade, and I'm going to date myself here, used to take typing classes in middle school because that's what we learned on PCs with dial-up internet. And I remember he used to say, the computer is only as smart as you are. If you can't turn it on, it doesn't work. If you don't know how to type, it doesn't type. It only is as smart as you are. And the AI is only as smart as you are with its prompts and its editing. And I think, as the technology has evolved, we believe, oh, AI is smarter than us, but it's not true. It is only as capable as you are, the PR firm.
And it can be a great assistant. And that's the phrase we use at our agency at Proper Propaganda, is that, here's Perplexity, one of the programs we use. Perplexity is a great research assistant. ChatGPT can be a good writing assistant. It is absolutely not the writer. It is absolutely not a researcher you can trust 100% of the time. I think these are enhancements and they can be powerful enhancements, but nothing, at least at present for now, has fully replaced the human. And you can always tell, at least I can always tell, and maybe it's because I'm a writer by trade, when something has been overly AI'd. It just sounds like a bunch of dross and nonsense.
Yeah, no, totally. And you can feel it. Um, so here's a question. Let's say that somebody's going to pursue PR on their own, they're going to invest their time and their resources. Where should they start?
I think the place to start is by listening, which is maybe ironic because PR is often thought of as this channel that doesn't shut the hell up, and PR people are often true to stereotype. But the best PR begins with listening, and I think research and investigation, listening are where you begin. You want to look at what are the conversations in our category, who's dominating those conversations, what kind of press are writing about our competitors, if you have very clearly delineated competitors. And I begin there, and you begin by listening and kind of building out a list of targets from there. Once you have that, you want to think about how you frame who you are and what you're doing, and you want to frame it. The holy grail is always differentiation. So you don't want to just say, yeah, we have this, and this like the other guy. You want to talk about what the problem is with the other guy and how your solution is different and solves the problem better. I think that's usually the first big block of 2 steps: listening and then thinking about differentiation.
And also, something you said, something I always like to advise is look at your competitors' bad reviews. Go to Trustpilot or go somewhere else and look at their 1 and 2 star reviews and see how you can turn that into your features and benefits, and talk about how, what you're doing solves the problem that they aren't. And, you're hearing it firsthand from their customers that are writing it publicly. It's all out there for the taking. So, and I think, if we talk about takeaways as we get close to the end here, it's also important to remember that you're talking to people. At the end of the day, these journalists, these media outlets, they're run by people just like you. Find people with a similar interest to your product that would be interested and uniquely passionate personally, and to not be afraid to start with those tier 2, tier 3 outlets, because I think sometimes the bigger outlets as well will be more, and tell me if I'm wrong, more inclined to pick up if they've seen some traction, or if they search your brand and they have a few articles come up, even if it's something local or more in a niche blog or, niche coverage. At least they see that you've done some work and you started, that you're not completely, at, zero. So I think, yeah, just keep that in mind.
Totally agree. I think that's that's absolutely where one needs to start. Don't be shy of starting at a lower level. I mean, hey, if you want to pitch the New York Times, go ahead and pitch the New York Times. Just don't expect them to put you on the front cover so you can show your mom right off the bat.
I think there's also a human element of success when you start getting a few smaller outlets. I think it also gets you in, you're building the habit, you're sharpening your skills, you're learning how to pitch, you're learning what also is connecting, what's sticking. And also, it feels good to get that coverage. And as you feel good, it starts to show, and it's kind of a snowball effect. So,
Totally. Like sales, when you break in and start selling a few products and get nice feedback on them, I mean, it's a snowball. And I think it's the same thing with press. That's always been our experience. And just adding to what you said, there's value in testing out your product and yourself with lower level press at the outset. Screwing up on that podcast that has 50 listeners is far, far less consequential than screwing up in a demo with The Verge.
absolutely, because it is forever. Unlike your ads that you can take down and delete, PR is forever. If they write it, it's there.
It's there. Yep.
And it's there, as we said in the beginning, good PR is with you forever, but so is the not good PR. So it's important to keep that in mind and, sharpen your skills. And remember that you're also going to be, you also need to understand who is going to be the spokesperson of the company. Is it you, the founder? Is it someone else? Are you going to bring a spokesperson? So it's also important, if that's going to be you and you don't have media experience or speaking experience or interview experience, to practice that. It's a skill.
Yeah, it totally is. And I think communication with the media is a very, very unique form of communication. The media is a buffer between you and an audience. So when you speak through a filter, when you speak through a buffer, you want to be succinct. You don't want to give them a Dickens novel. You want to be very, very clear. You want to find different ways to say the same thing so that you don't sound like a robot. I mean, speaking to the media is a very, very unique thing and does require, I think, a unique skill set that can be practiced and honed, but you need to have before you go out and do it.
Totally. Cool. So, I mean, this has been a lot of fun. I just want to put out there, anyone who has any questions, you can drop them in the Q&A. Jackson, you cool if we kind of switch over and answer some questions?
Of course, yeah, whatever. I'm here.
We've just been answering questions the whole time. Let's actually,
Yeah.
everyone who's still here, you're welcome to answer some questions. Remember that this is recorded, so we're going to be sharing it with everyone tomorrow. You'll be able to watch it on YouTube through the link, and we'll be emailing everyone with that, as well as the link to book a call with one of our AEs and the gift of the audio book. So that's going to be shared later as well. Somebody asked a follow-up to an earlier comment that we made, how much they should focus on their competitors' bad reviews versus keeping positive focus on your own positives. I'm gonna let you take that first.
It's a good question. The way we tend to focus on the shortcomings of competitors or the bad side of competitors is to talk about them in the abstract. So we would never pitch a journalist saying, hey, Sony's audio speaker has got terrible bass. We're here from Sennheiser to give you bass, and we're going to give you bass like you've never had. We never do that. We just say there's been some chatter in the press about speakers without bass. We don't often refer to the competitors directly. We do it in the abstract, if that's fair. And I think if you're doing it in the abstract, that allows you to kind of quickly transition to yourself and your benefits.
Totally. And adding on that, it's also not about focusing on your competitors' bad reviews. It's about understanding what their customers are not happy with or displeased with, to understand where you can shine your positives and to really emphasize that. So if people are really talking, it's their pain points. They purchased something, they invested in it, and they're not receiving the benefit that they expected. And so it's your job to convey what benefit the customer is going to receive. So you can look at that and parlay it to really highlighting what your product benefits are.
And often dissatisfaction is at a category level. So we have a client, their name is Hoverero. They make a flying camera. It's a drone. It's been very well received. Primarily, it's been very well received because the thing is dead simple to use. If you look at drone cameras in aggregate, not necessarily DJI cameras, not necessarily company X cameras, but they've all, on some level, been critiqued for not being easy to use. Well, here's this thing that's that simple to use. That's all you need. You just need to say, hey, camera drones don't need to be that simple. Grandma can use this thing.
And that's exactly solving the point in a very simple and clever way. I like it. So I think we're getting close to time. We don't have any other questions. Do you have anything you want to add before we like hop off?
Not too many things. Maybe just I know you guys are going to get the
Oh,
audiobook, and I'm grateful
wait,
for that. For
wait,
Kindle
there's
readers.
two more questions.
Oh,
Sorry,
sure.
can I interrupt you?
Please.
Okay. If you only have $1,000 for your crowdfunding, if you only have $1,000 for your crowdfunding campaign, how would you spend it? My intuition is ads.
Performance marketing. Yep. Start there.
Or,
Absolutely.
you know what? Or an influencer.
Maybe. I don't know. I would put it into performance marketing.
I think it completely depends on the cost of the product because you need to really look at what that cost per acquisition is going to be as well.
Yep.
And also,
Totally.
if you've done it before. Ooh, okay. And then, wow, people are now coming in with the questions right as we were coming off.
It's okay.
Could you please elaborate a bit about campaign for soft? You know what? That's going to be something to ask an AE. If we have an email list but no subscribers, how do we notify our recipients without triggering a Gmail shutdown?
Huh. Good
GDPR,
question.
I just want to say GDPR rules, whatever the GDPR rules are, follow it. Follow the GDPR rules. Don't, yeah. How do you market a movie versus a project? For that individual, again, we're going to be sending a message. Okay, so it seems like the questions are towards the end. So we're going to be sending the link to talk to an AE. So you are welcome to connect with him and ask some of these questions. Now I will not interrupt you.
No, it's all good. That's totally fine. You gave me the platform to speak. I have no problem. I
Go
was
for
just
it.
going to say, you guys are getting the audio book, Tech PR Playbook, my book. The Kindle version is free today on Amazon. If you want to go there, if you are a Kindle person, it is free. We are at properpropaganda.net. We are not, do not be confused by the communist looking branding. We very much are capitalists and we're very much into all of that. So check us out. And again, thank you for listening.
Awesome. Thank you everyone who has joined. And again, we will be emailing everyone with the recording of this. And if you are not watching it live, you can always shoot us a message and we'd be happy to be in touch with you. I'm going to pause.